What's up, y'all? LTJ Reads is here. This is throwing light, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Before we get started and go over to our guests, I just want to remind you guys, keep following, throwing light. I am promising transformation this year. I really promise. We're going through a renewal and a revival, and it doesn't seem like it yet, but it's coming. There's going to be some big changes. I want you guys to follow you on my YouTube channel. You can figure out how to get to my YouTube channel because either you are watching it from YouTube, in which I would like you to subscribe so you can keep watching these throwing light episodes. I also remind you that the Throwing Like tour is being posted. I posted in New York room. We're going to be having some other ones coming soon. And some creative content that I'm going to be doing personally that I hope kind of gives a more of a depth to who I am as a person. But just have patience with me. Keep following. Keep subscribing. And we're going to be doing some really cool things on my YouTube channel. With that being said, let's go ahead and get over to our guest. We've got Uretha Burns, drag performer. I met Uretha last Austin Keat weekend. So that's really great. That's so interesting because we just had a discussion because Uretha's going to be competing for mixed leather at Austin Keat Weekend. I'm going to be having the producer of Austin Keat Weekend on this show in just a couple of days. So that's cool. We'll get to kind of talk a little bit about that. Get a little bit of a preview then of what's to come. So, Uretha, where are you at? You're in Pasadena, Texas.
Yes, I'm in Pasadena, Texas. I've been in Houston pretty much my entire life.
You guys, Pasadena is outside of Texas if you don't know. I mean, outside of Houston if you don't know that. It is south of Houston, I asked. It is between Houston and Galveston, and obviously people in the area know exactly that are watching this area know what we're talking about. People from out in the area, just suburb. Would you call it a suburb?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Suburb of Houston. All right,
majority of Houston is suburbs.
it's massive. I call it the blob. It's just like, how long does it take to drive from one side of Houston to the other? I'd say about an hour, right?
I would say about another hour, but people kind of argue on what exactly is Houston as well. So
I don't know. I feel like it's from like I kind of know exit numbers, and I don't want to throw out the wrong exit or something, but it's like man, no. Now I got to go and study the actual numbers, but it's a range. I mean, like there's what Katy to. So I would say what like the start. So it would start on one end at Katy, right? At the end of Katy, start, and then you.
because you have channel view in like Crosby on the opposite end, and that's kind of I think where people stop going to Houston because it's still technically Harris County, but it is not Houston.
Okay, wow. So, well, let's talk about. So, you have been doing drag. Let's delve into that. And now you're getting involved, obviously, unless you've already been involved with the leather community. So, let's figure out how these two things are merging because that's pretty cool to be a performer and to be going for a title. So that's exciting. I'm gonna you're probably gonna pull some tricks and stunts out. But what led you to getting into drag? And I just want to say, you are non-binary, pronouns are they them. So, let's talk about your evolution. What was like your there's a lot here. There's a lot. Let's start with like your awakening of being non-binary. What was that? What was that journey like for you?
It definitely started. So I've been doing drag for almost 10 years now. And right when I had started drag, I had the idea of doing my drag performer uh, persona as a non-binary performer. And then just over time, that kind of transferred outside of that. And just overall been very interested in just androgyny and that side of gender and just pretty much kind of like the gender rebellion aspect of it as well is what first attracted it to me. And then just as I gotten older, it turned into realize like that's what first drew me to it, but it definitely still was what I wanted to be in my identity. And now as I've gotten older, it's kind of just what it is, to be honest. It's now kind of just a part of my normal everyday life at this point.
So where did you first see drag?
First, see drag. I mean, that it was called drag would be Drag Race, like season four, like a lot of people. And but before then, like I grew up watching like Rocky Horror or Elvira, and like didn't name that as drag, but I mean that still was drag, and then like Elvira is a drag queen, and Rocky Horror was like rooted in a lot of drag. So pretty young, honestly.
I don't know if I overly thought too much about drag growing up. I'm sure I'm much older. When I was growing up, Tu Wong Fu was like a big thing when that came in the 90s. But I like when Drag Race first came out, like with the people going crazy, everybody was like, "Oh, I want to be a drag queen," whatever. So, that it was fun for a moment, but actually, like putting effort into drag, I don't have that passion. I've learned so because I really don't want to shave. So, and I don't want to be a bearded queen, but I have done drag. I've done drag twice now. Once in college and once for my title year for Mr. Austin Eagle for fundraising. Only times I've ever done it. And so I did TLC No Scrubs. I know the rap part really good from Left Eye. So when I want to go back a little bit more into androgyny, truly my understanding and my empathy and understanding towards drag actually came from studying William Shakespeare. Crazy, right? I was an English major, so drag and art, equating the two have never been. That's never been difficult for me. I know that's not them. It's like a lot of people don't even understand. Like back then, like women couldn't even be actors, so the men were playing the female parts and stuff like that. And so it's very interesting how our society kind of like frowns on drag because we see it manifest in so many different arenas, especially entertainment, and we don't tend to like go after Tyler Perry for playing Medea, right?
I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ballard Drag Queen in a podcast that said like that one of the like possibly the richest famous drag queen is Tyler Perry,
Yeah, yeah.
and like has a conservative leaning audience. And like I 33, and so I grew up seeing Tyler Perry and a lot of drag. Definitely, it wasn't called drag.
We don't. I don't know why we don't call it what it is, but it is. Yes, Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry does drag, and it's been decades now, and does have a conservative leaning audience because for some reason, and the way that Tyler Perry does it, and the African me being an African American, that the African American community can be very, very, not as empathetic towards homosexuality or LGBT issues or anything like that. So it's interesting. He's a case to be studied, but he's kind of like a perfect storm of it, I guess, to where he can actually he's a billionaire now. Androgyny, like what is androgyny to you?
To me, it really is just presenting as you want to present in a way, and just there definitely is a rebellious aspect to that, and I was attracted to that a lot more when I first started doing drag and getting more open into non-binary. But just overall, it's just a state of just existing, because androgyny is something that is labeled within still the binary, and so you have to have the binary to define it. Uh, and so it's something that is very hard to define because of that. And you have generations definitely changed because like I'm not going to say my androgyny is definitely highly inspired by 80s and 90s. It was a very androgynous fashion period, and when a lot of androgyny came out, uh, yeah,
I,
I do think also I've noticed too that there seems to be a lot of in the early 2000s when you had like metrosexual and then like tomboy and stuff. Like it
Metro
seems like the people society has a very different perspective on what somebody that was born a woman should look like androgynous versus someone that was born a man, and so it's a very interesting just question on like what exactly is it.
is metrosexual still a thing or no, not anymore?
I
I remember that.
I would say that like that type of personality in person is it because of like of just like somebody that is straight and lives as a like a straight person but does present like pretty flamboyant. And yeah, there's, I don't, I haven't, well, I'm not on TikTok, but I've seen some like videos of like people talking about, I think
What?
somebody said it was like their gay little boyfriends, but it was like talking about their straight boyfriends that were acting like very flamboyant in a way to make women feel safe around them.
I
So it's
I had
very, yeah.
I had friends in the early 2000s growing up in college that embraced the term metrosexual very proudly. So
Mhm.
it's a different time. That was a conservative time too. So, uh,
Mhm.
okay. So, let's go into drag now. Well, when was the first time you did drag?
It was January because it was right around my birthday. And it was not too long after I had moved back to Houston because I went to college at Sam Houston State and I first went for studio art and performance art. And then I transferred to film and then I ended up landing on acting and dance. And then whenever I basically had run out of a lot of financial aid, and so I just couldn't really go to school anymore. And based on my professors was like, you have everything you need to just go do whatever. And kind of whenever I restarted everything fully out and everything, drag was just very obvious where I could do everything that I had learned and combine so many things and be an independent performer and without rules. And I had started basically doing performances at it was called Barcode at the time here in Houston, and it was a very like alternative bar where they would just kind of have pretty much every type of show. And there was a show called Smoke Break, and which basically the concept was is that back in like the 80s or 90s, they would say like, "Oh, that's a smoke break performer or smoke break queen," and what they mean is that like whenever they get on stage, people go take a smoke break because they're doing something like weird or something that people don't like. And so they had this show basically called Smoke Break, where the concept was to bring performers to do like very weird performances that usually wouldn't be shown in other spaces. And I just started from there. And yeah,
So, what would you say are your inspirations? But first, before we go there, I want to first, what was the song that you performed at Austin King Weekend last year?
there was two songs. I think I kind of remember the name. Uh, I honestly cannot remember the names right now.
Did you do Cranberries?
No, I did not. I mean, I have, but I didn't do it then. But somebody did Cranberries, I believe.
I thought somebody did Cranberries. I thought it was you, but maybe. I remember what you wore. And so let's talk about that. I want to talk about your inspirations, your drag inspirations first.
uh,
What,
so
wait,
my dragons, sorry,
said who, what, when, where?
a lot of my drag inspiration definitely comes from my experience in like performance art and experimental theater. And just I have a pretty background and a training in a lot of different experimental arts and dance and physical theater. Uh, and so I try and take a lot of inspiration from things outside of drag a lot. And I started very much into horror drag, and I just like horror and shock drag, and just bringing. whatever it takes to get people's attention. And I really enjoyed that for a while. And just over time, I've been working more on performance arts and mental health advocacy with drag and doing more like one person shows. And yeah, I I think there was two performers I saw. There was Sasha Velour that when I had saw her stuff outside of Drag Race was one of the big moments where I was like, oh, you can do that stuff outside of drag. And also like seeing like Jinx Monsoon's like shows and just learning about all this other drag that's happening outside of the gay club scene and that there's so many other things you can do with drag. So you can basically pretty much do anything. And so I honestly just have such a wide range of inspirations. Last year, I was focused, or last year and the year before, a lot on the myth of Narcissus, and basically just the concept of like what is narcissism and why is the myth of Narcissus is like very presented in a very homosexual way, and he's like very flamboyant in all the stories and all the paintings, and why like sexuality is so combined with it. And I worked from there for a majority of my past 2 years. And so I tend to take one inspiration and just kind of run with it.
And okay, so then, but you have a certain range, right? Obviously, you're not going to perform a Britney Spears song, correct?
So I actually really do enjoy sometimes with that. And I want to do a little bit more because I like both artistic and like political drag and art, but I also just do enjoy the aspect of being able to perform and provide escapism. And I still very much do enjoy it. It's just I tend to do a lot more of the other stuff lately.
More of what? Like more from an artistic
More
perspective?
of the like more artistic, and I guess kind of I don't want to say in a way like art house where it is like the value is put more on what is being said rather than entertaining. But I still do like to try and make it somewhat entertaining, but versus uh, a performance that is purely for entertainment.
Got you. I got you. I got you. I got you. So, are you big on choreography?
I am, but I'm big on because my experience comes from physical theater and like modern dance. And so things that doesn't look like it would be doesn't look like exactly dance, but it's very choreographed and on beat and is very rehearsed and just very intentional. Because I started loving physical theater in college and just all this how to act with your body and use your body and all this stuff. Yeah.
The opposite of physical theater would be abstract theater.
I don't know if I would say there's an opposite, and it's hard because physical theater is mostly comes from Europe and a few other places, but it's
You say
if you ever seen
I I took some theater in college, but
Mhm,
understand, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Introduction to theater,
mhm,
what it was actually like learning about theater, like
mhm,
go in there and you start acting for low. I was very ignorant as a college kid. Um,
mhm.
so my thing is that then theatrical makes sense to me now after seeing you perform. But going back to theater, you know, do you look at your performances as like theater pieces as you do them, kind of? Do you kind of be like, okay, like this is the stage, this is where I need to be, this is how I need to emote? Like, how do you go into your state of preparation?
Yeah, it very much is a theater and acting, and from a performance art standpoint versus a choreography standpoint, but the choreography kind of comes from that. Uh, and even if it is just something I'm doing purely for entertainment, I still have to have like motivations or all that. So I definitely do approach it in a theatrical way.
Or do you have any particular like theatrical or theater influences or people that have inspired you in theater?
Uh, I got very inspired by there was this group, Brechtian theater, and which was a time period in history. Brecht basically was a playwright that his plays weren't that great, but the concepts he had was good, and so he had basically this idea of you can take something that's very political and very controversial, or that would be illegal, and then talk about it by putting it somewhere else. So basically, like if you like doing a play about like a war in Africa, but then setting it in like America or something like that to kind of take people away from it. And so he basically bypassed a lot of censorship in Germany by doing stuff like that. And he would kind of just sneak in a lot of political things and very entertaining plays. And I took a lot of inspiration from that. And clowning, I really like Cirque du Soleil and a handful of other like clowning. I just very much enjoy because of the aspect of being able to express using your body is something that is not done as much in American theater and American films, even. Uh, yeah,
Um, you said film too, so like you use film for inspiration?
I do. I haven't been watching a lot of movies lately in the past couple of years, to be honest. But I was very much into film and thought I wanted to be a music video director or a director for a little while. And I like film just for a lot of like art house films, I would say. And I'm very bad with names, so it's hard for me to go directors. But yeah, and I cinematography because I did a lot of cinematography, and so whenever I was first doing drag, I would bring in like my own lights, and I would bring in like set pieces and stuff, which was kind of what set me apart, I would say, for a while. And my drag popped off a lot more whenever during the pandemic and digital drag because I had that experience in film. Yeah.
So you're going to be competing for Mixed Texas Leather 2026, right? All right, let's talk about it. So you've gotten involved in the leather community, correct?
Yes, I have been involved off and on for a while. It's just only been the past year or two that I've been purposely and involved in like getting more involved at a organization standpoint.
What's been some of your passions?
A lot of my passion because I've all my art has always been very sexualized and sexual energy and focused on that, and I feel very passionate about validating sexual performance in art and calling it art and uh, fighting a lot of the censorship that's happening. It has been happening for a while, and just why do queer people not to get to be as sexualized compared to in public or in like mainstream media compared to other people. Uh, and I was fighting my way to doing a lot of kink work basically in a lot of non-kink spaces and was just not uh, as involved in the kink scene and just finally started making the dive into it.
So sexual performance in art, is there a particular scene or anything that you um have used as a point of reference for any of your art?
There was I wish I remember her name. There was a performer that I've seen on Instagram in Amsterdam, and he's done some like basically he is a full like a club kid drag performer that does go-go dancing, but he does it in such a very well presented way, and like his costumes are very drag queen aesthetics and just very over the top. And a lot of the uh, we have a Houston LGBTQ website that has a lot of magazines and like stuff from the 80s and 90s. And like back at Ripcord or like the Eagle, when they would do more, they were allowed to have more open performances and like kink demos. And just, I've seen people that are just performing without exactly being a performer, but they're still presenting themselves in a way. And so I guess like you like club kids and non-performers is where I started getting a lot of my inspirations in that.
So, and you said Club Kids, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I watched a movie, Party Monster.
Mhm.
And that was in college, and that was kind of like, to be honest, like, because I don't think Drag Race was out yet, so that was the first thing
Mhm.
I had exposure to anything about a club scene or what that was, or club kids and things like that. So it's interesting how we gravitate towards our inspirations or things that, or our first interactions with culture sometimes. What makes you want to be Mixed Texas Leather 2026?
So I've been doing a lot more organization and organizing and mentorship in the past couple of years. I did a grant project called The Future is Trans 2, 3 years ago with the Idea Fund here in Houston. And so I started hosting more often in that. And then from there, I started getting more involved in the kink scene and teaching workshops. And I just have had a lot more of a passion for local activism in the past couple of years. And I am very validating of like kink and sex in all aspects, but I just feel I love how the aspect of being able to combine activism and kink at the same time is something that I feel is very unique and to a lot of the queer kink scene that I just wanted to be involved in.
That's awesome. And for people, if they're not clear with that or aren't sure what I said, the Mixed Texas Leather title, it's MX,
Mhm.
a non-binary title. You said the future of trans.
Yeah, it was the Future is Trans. And so basically, we did a project where we took a bunch of trans and non binary people that haven't performed and haven't made art, but they want to. And so basically, we kind of mentored them to start making art and start performing at spaces.
Right on. All right, Uretha, we are towards the end here, and I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask everybody that's on the show. What is something that you feel that we are not shedding enough light on in our community?
And this is kind of a lot of what I'm focused on with mixed leather right now is especially in Houston. Houston is so spread out, and so there's so many things that are going on outside of the like kink meetups and all this stuff, and that there's a lot of people and organizations. There's a lot of activism and activity happening outside of officially like organized things, like with drag as well too. Like there's so much drag happening outside of drag clubs and drag shows, and really just expanding outside of bubbles and spaces and exploring outside of what you would traditionally expect to find what you're looking for.
It is definitely important right now to keep an open mind and definitely have empathy and not judgment towards the things that we are exposed to, especially within our own. We are faced with discrimination all the time. It's just it does a disservice for us not to at least. I don't want to say it's fair not to be interested, but I think you still should be open to learning if you're confronted with it. So, it's just kind of like with pronouns, like it's a really simple thing. You know, it's just like, as introducing yourself and saying what your name is. It's just like that's part of how you identify. It doesn't have to be as bigger as people make it out to be. It's just something. We have brains. We have the ability to be creative with what we want to do, and language is something that we're supposed to be expanding. And you just see the language shrinking and being that's mental slavery. You know what I'm saying? All right, Eureka. So I am so thankful for you being on the show. Before we end, there's just something that you have to do. I'm going to count to three, and then when I say three, you're going to say, if you're not doing like, you're not acting right. Are you ready? One, two, three.
If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
There we go. Perfect. All right. Well, that's been another episode of Throwing Line. I appreciate you so much for being on. I wish you your bestest journey on this going onto the stage in front of a lot of people. It's not just the state. You got people coming down from around the world to come to Austin Key Weekend, and it's a big stage. I've been on that stage before, so I
Mhm.
commend for just is stepping up and taking the opportunity to show up for your community. I wish you the best. I wish you the results of whatever you want to the outcome to be for this journey. And I'm glad to have had the opportunity to shed some light on who you are on this show. With that being said, I want to thank everybody, and that's been another episode of Throwing Light, and we're out.